Welcome back to another episode of Scoreboard Cinema, our sports and film podcast. Once again, as part of our summer blockbuster series, we're going to go back to the Roman Empire to talk about the definitive Gladiator and Colosseum movie, Gladiator, with Russell Crowe. On this podcast, we'll talk about the spellbinding Colosseum action, Russell Crowe and Joaquin Hans Zimmer and his Mount Rushmore film compositions, as well as our reactions to the Gladiator 2 trailer and what we expect to see with that coming up later. With that out of the way, coming up next, are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Gladiator, up next. Okay, so this is Gladiator. So, obviously with the Gladiator 2 trailer out, we thought this would be perfect for the summer blockbuster series. But honestly, this is sort of an unconventional blockbuster. So, there's a genre of movies, it's lesser known. It's called the sword and sandal genre, and it's reserved for the desert Roman Empire times, and it sort of had a renaissance after this movie. I mean, they made Clash of the Titans remakes and stuff like that, and there's movies with a little bit of elements, but I didn't really think they could ever make a movie this successful with this kind of backdrop behind it. But I guess they just rode the wave of the Russell Crowe 5-year prime that he had, and they made it work. And honestly, there's a lot to like about this movie. I think first and foremost, to have a great hero, you have to have a fantastic villain, and that's where this movie, in my opinion, succeeds the most. Joaquin Phoenix really just puts his name on the map, and I was sort of shocked looking back at his filmography and even watching some of those movies before it. There's really no indication that Joaquin Phoenix would ever put on a performance like this. He was in Parenthood when he was a child actor. He was a shy kid in that movie. Really sweet and really nice role of his, but nothing to indicate that he could ever pull off something like this. And then later on in his life, he did To Die For with Nicole Kidman, but he just plays a dumb high school kid along with Casey Affleck. And then I looked at some of his other roles. None of his other movies were even that big leading up to this. I know you've seen, yeah, that was the big one, but I've never seen that, so I can't really speak on that role.
It's not like this at all. It's just a bit part. He's a cashier, and he helps Nicolas Cage navigate the world of snuff films and torture and stuff. So
now, I mean, knowing what we know now about Joaquin Phoenix, obviously after this movie, he just took off. I mean, he was in We Own the Night. He was in I'm Still Here. He was in Joker, Her, Inherent Vice, Signs, The Village. He just had a renaissance. But coming into this movie, based on what I was reading, he was still trying to get the I'm River Phoenix's brother off of his back. Obviously, that's what he was known as, especially early in his career when River was super successful with movies like Stand By Me and Sneakers and My Own Private Idaho and stuff like that. And now I think he's really, since then, really written a name for himself. And I dare even say it has overshadowed him in this role. And I mean, he's fucking crazy. He's the perfect, mentally messed in the head, psychotic, also kind of humorous though. I'll talk a little bit about specific scenes, but he's very good at capturing your attention, even if you know that he's a repulsive villain in this movie.
Yeah, he's pathetically funny in a way. And that's something I had written down is I think every scene that he's in, for the most part, he steals it away from whoever else is acting opposite him, which I think is something he does in a lot of other movies. I think in this one, he's the clear best actor in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like he has the most to work with. And obviously, I think it's pretty easy to say he's the best actor that was involved in this project. I mean,
yeah.
But at the time, Russell Crowe, and I'll talk about him a little bit later, but this was just the greatest 5-year stretch of every person ever, of every actor.
Yeah.
Easily. Just to have a, not fall off, but the roles that he got after this, he never had a run like this. And honestly, few actors have.
Yeah. Would you say this is one of Joaquin Phoenix's, or I guess, is this Joaquin Phoenix's best role? Because I've heard the discourse that this is his best.
Honestly, yes, I feel that way because I think that, first of all, he's basically going up against all the big shots. He's going up against Richard Harris, who was a respected Irish actor for 40 years. He was in a lot of big movies. He was in Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood. He was in Patriot Games with fucking Harrison Ford. And then even up until like the very end of his life, like he was Professor Dumbledore in the first couple of Harry Potter movies. Like that's what I know him as. But he's going up against this really respected actor in the beginning of the movie, and obviously he's going up against Russell Crowe and some of the other acting giants. And for him to basically be like not a rookie, I mean, he was certainly not established at this point. I don't know how old he was in this, and just to like outduel them like this is
Yeah,
fantastic.
he was 24 years old in this movie.
Like perfect.
Yeah.
And he commands the screen. He sometimes gets a little too emotional, but like I kind of love it.
Yeah, he gets
But
a little weird at moments.
yeah, like I just think like there's other subtle performances of his that I like. I would probably put her second. I really love his performance as like a loner in that. I think the Joker's a really good part for him too, but I just think it's a lesser version of De Niro in Taxi Driver. And then like I haven't seen like I Walk the Line or like The Village and some of those other movies, but I mean, I've heard he's fine in them. I've heard he's not
Yeah.
like stealing any award shows with those
No,
performances, but
no. I feel like Joaquin Phoenix makes like the roles he plays just to the point where only he can play them. It's interesting because I feel like a lot of times like his character is like a loner and he isn't necessarily a loner in this film, but he is in a way because he's getting backstabbed by the people around him. His father like says he didn't love him that much and he kind of gets betrayed. So he's on his own, but it's kind of to his fault. He kind of put himself in that situation and many times, but Joaquin Phoenix makes the roles he plays just to the point where it's like I can't imagine anyone else playing them. There's something like tragic about his performances a lot of times, but also pathetic a lot of times. Like I think to Joker where it's like this guy's pathetic, but you also feel like a tragedy for him. And I don't think or I can't think of any actors that really tap into this like he can.
okay, so I'm glad you talked about that because I was actually researching some of the production and I really wanted to know what you think about this. So I was reading this, and when Ridley Scott was casting for this movie, Ridley Scott considered Jude Law for Commodus. What do you think about that?
I could see that too. It would be more, I don't know how they would pull that off because yeah, he's a way different actor. I think he can kind of tap into that, but I don't know if he could convey like the tragicness of the performance more. I think he would be more charismatic because he is a more charismatic actor. Joaquin Phoenix is more of like a disturbed, tragic, struck-in person more than Jude Law is the more like charismatic. I mean, he's in Talented Mr. Ripley, I think is like around that similar. It's like a year before this,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
So that's like a far cry from this character. So that would have been interesting. I think Joaquin Phoenix is the better choice. I think it just would have been a different take on the character, but it still could have worked.
I agree with you in the fact that, like, obviously some of the more raw violence that is portrayed in Joaquin Phoenix's character would have been great. But I actually think a lot of, like, I don't know, like, because he has a lot of wit in this movie. I think Commodus, for all of his flaws, like, he's very great with, like, his dialogue and his exchanges and his rebukes towards certain people. And obviously, it's a whole different universe at when he plays the character in Talented Mr. Ripley, when he plays
Mhm.
Dickie.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, there are some similarities between like Dickie Greenleaf and Commodus. They're both very rich, privileged, blowhard, very good shit talkers.
Yeah.
And I still think they made the right choice because I don't think Jude Law could have pulled off like the physical stunts. Like there's a scene where Joaquin Phoenix is like training with his sword against like multiple Roman soldiers, and
Mhm.
he honestly looks surprisingly built. I couldn't see that in Jude Law. I mean, he looks like a twig in Talented Mr. Ripley,
Yeah, that's fair.
but you never know. But I always thought that was interesting. I think it would have been worse, but I still probably would have liked the character.
Yeah, I
But yeah, it would
agree.
have been a different movie.
Was there anyone else that was in contention to play him, or was it just those two?
That was the main one that I saw. But
Okay.
I guess while we're in the casting what if for this movie, they had a couple interesting ones for Maximus, and I don't know how I feel about some of these. These basically just seem like we're gonna take the five biggest actors in Hollywood and just like plop them into this Roman Empire backdrop. So They had Mel Gibson, who I think probably would have been a good replacement because obviously he's played this in so many movies before and after this. Like obviously Braveheart is like the seminal like companion piece to this movie. You know, it's just about a man who's fighting for freedom, trying to liberate the powers that be in the setting that he's in, and just trying to like inspire and galvanize these troops to fight for him. And
Yeah.
obviously he's done that in Braveheart, but he's also done it in war movies, you know, The Patriot, We Were Soldiers, stuff like that. So I think he probably would have been the best replacement.
Is
I
he
don't
too
know.
old though? Gotta have at least 10 years on Russell Crowe, I feel like.
Okay, he's 68 and Russell Crowe is 60. So, I mean,
it could have
they
worked.
could have done some de-aging.
Yeah.
I've never seen a movie where like Mel Gibson is doing like vicious hand-to-hand combat against somebody, but I don't know. I feel like the superstardom, again, I've said this many times already, but like just the run that Russell Crowe was having, it just seems like he couldn't have not been given this part just with the resume that he had put on.
Yeah.
Um,
Who else was there?
okay, so there was Antonio Banderas,
No.
which I think like I mean,
He was too busy doing Spy Kids.
yeah, well, so I was like, my guess was just they thought like swordsman because he was in like the Zorro movies. So I guess that's one of the routes they could have gone, but I don't know.
No, I don't
I've
think.
never seen like I'm not too familiar with his filmography, so I just don't know. But yeah, that just seems a little too out there for me. And then lastly, this one I just flatly don't understand. And I guess this will sort of tune out some of the fans who said I was glazing him earlier on the last podcast. But yes, in fact, Tom Cruise was up for audition for this movie.
No
And
way.
I physically can't imagine him being in something like this. And I guess to anybody who is wondering like what would have happened if Tom Cruise had been selected as Maximus for this movie, the answer you would get is just watch The Last Samurai, where he plays like Nathan Algren. He's like a swordsman who learns the way of the samurai. He's like an army general who fights for the people of Japan. And yeah, that's probably like the best chance you're ever going to get to see Tom Cruise in a Gladiator movie. It's actually a pretty good movie, to be honest, but in the terms of this movie, I just can't imagine him
He
playing
doesn't
this
have
role.
like the look for it. He doesn't have like, I feel like that part needs to have a ruggedness to it, and I don't think Tom Cruise has that.
No, I mean yeah, he's never really played that. Really, I mean, like, yeah, the Last Samurai is the closest role to that because he's like a violent drunk in the beginning of that movie. But yeah, I think like for the people they had, I guess if I had to pick a substitute, like I would say Mel Gibson, but I still think they made the right choice. So I gotta say, John Matheson and his cinematography, like this is really a fantastic looking movie. Like this is probably like Ridley Scott's always been good with this. He's always made like these very epic, larger than life scope pictures, especially like now, you know, like even Napoleon. I don't really love that movie, but the aesthetic of it is gorgeous.
Yeah.
You know, same thing with like Kingdom of Heaven. He did this with Exodus, Robin Hood, but like he's always been good at like finding the right cinematographer to direct it. And I think especially for just the aesthetic, especially when they go to the Colosseum and you just see like the rose petals flying into the sand and just like the towers all around Rome. It's just really beautiful.
I really like the final shot of the movie where it's just panning up from the Colosseum to like the landscape of all of Rome. That's really cool. And oddly enough, there were a lot of shots in this movie that reminded me of Blade Runner, which might be weird to say, but specifically
same director.
The scenes where Joaquin Phoenix is in like the whatever his home. There's a lot of shots that remind me of Blade Runner where they're in like a dark room, but the shadows are like peeking through like rays of light. I don't know how to describe it, but there was multiple times, specifically in scenes with Joaquin Phoenix in like a dark room talking to someone that reminded me of shots from the 82 Blade Runner with Harrison Ford, where he's like in a dark room talking to someone. I don't know if it's the same cinematographer or not, but it did remind me of that.
Yeah, and obviously like I saw the 4K disc in my library. I checked that out and it just pops out, which is crazy too cuz like it feels like every movie that was released in the 2000s was either just like the ugliest looking piece of shit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like it's like Bamboozled or like 28 Days Later, or it's like Gladiator or Lord of the Rings or like any of those other movies where they just filmed it in like 75 millimeter and just gave like IMAX 70K cameras just to fucking film this.
A lot of films around those time had a weird like aesthetic look to them. And for it coming out this long ago, I think a lot of the effects, CGI, and just the look of the film aged very well. I have to imagine the budget was like absurd on this movie.
Yeah, I think it was pretty high. I mean, obviously at that point, Russell Crowe and Ridley Scott probably commanded a pretty penny, but yeah, I think they used it pretty well. I guess the only times where I'm like, guys, what the fuck is like when they get the tigers out of the sand pits.
Yeah.
Sometimes like I can tell like, all right, that's clearly CGI or at least green screen, but
Yeah.
whatever it is, like I can tell like that tiger's not actually on Russell Crowe or near Russell Crowe.
Oh,
And
no.
for reasons, obviously, but like that was just like I don't know why not just like not have that there in the first place? Because that looks a little ridiculous. Okay, the budget was $103 million. Other than that, I think for the most part the movie looks pretty good.
Yeah, there's a lot of movies from even up to like 2015 where it's that recent and it's still aged like shit. So I think that's pretty impressive for the time. Like a lot of 2000 most 2000s movies that would have had a budget like this or used a lot of visual effects in a blockbuster have aged very poorly, I will say. So credit to the director and cinematographer and everyone on this film. It
Yeah,
is
and then
well made. Minus, I was looking up like just goofy stuff about this movie, just looking at background stuff. There is two scenes that maybe aged poorly. There's one scene where they're riding on the chariot in the Colosseum and it falls over, and you can clearly see like a gas tank or gas cylinder on the back of it
oh,
that would
I
not
didn't
have
even
been
notice that.
around at the time. And then there's another scene. It's one of the, I think it might be the first time Maximus is fighting in that like smaller Coliseum. And the scene where he says, "Are you not entertained?" There's
Yeah.
a guy in the stands. It's clearly one of the cameramen. He's just wearing like a white t-shirt and holding a camera. This is like, how the hell did you miss that in like the post-production of the movie? But like you cannot see it unless you're watching in like slow motion or something. But I just thought those were funny. That's just a
Okay.
huge nitpick that someone who probably has watched this movie 100 times found.
Speaking more about the way the movie looks, though, we can't talk about the shot composition and the camera work without talking about the action in front of it.
Mhm.
And I think that like all the action set pieces in the Coliseum are fantastic. I mean, that's really what people
Yeah,
are gonna come for when they watch this movie. And I think that like, despite some of the graphic violence, it really is applause worthy. Just
yeah,
because of the spectacle of it all. I mean, I don't love, but like when they go and have their first main Coliseum fight when
yeah,
it's like Russell Crowe and Dijman Hansu and some of the other guys, and they're literally like it's an unfair fight. They're going up against chariots,
yeah.
horse-drawn chariots and shit like that.
The undefeated people.
Yeah, and they're literally like they're supposed to lose because that's the story of how it goes. The emperors are supposed to win that fight, but then Maximus, being a war commander and whatnot, he just totally leads these people, these like unskilled, like not experienced with any combat at all. He gets them all in like a center stage, gets their shields in front of them, and then he just takes them down. Like they decapitate, or they don't decapitate, they cut a girl in half.
Yeah, it's like a
Before
Friday the 13th murder.
that was a little ridiculous, but I mean, I don't doubt that that happened in like a
Oh yeah.
Roman emperor times. Yeah, like I just think that that combined with like the confrontation that Maximus has with Commodus, where he just gives that speech, like, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance. Like I don't know. I fucking love everything in the Colosseum is like 11 out of 10 type shit.
I do agree. I think those are like the ultimate blockbuster moments of this film. Those are like, I don't even know how to explain it, but those are scenes that would be like 10 out of 10 in a theater for sure, maybe 11 out of 10. But I think like the way it was filmed is pretty good because at this time there was like that shaky cam style of action. Maybe this was a little bit before it, but it was definitely within the 5 years after it. What do you think of how they filmed it? Like at times it's in slow motion, the fighting, and at other times it's like a close up
Okay,
almost.
so I think it's present a little bit in like later in the movie,
Yeah.
but like the intro scene, I'm gonna talk about that later too. That is like probably the worst of it. It just doesn't make sense when he first commands his fleet to like attack all these people, and then for some reason with all the sword shit, he just like randomly, it's not even like slow motion. It's like he like cuts out specific frames so it looks intentionally very choppy.
Yeah.
And I just don't know why he did that. It looks like it's like if you're in like a club and there's like strobe lights going on, that's like what it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's
it
a
just
good.
never
Yeah.
made sense to me because it's never present in the rest of the movie. And it's just bad action, in my opinion. Like, I don't like when films do that unless it's like, I don't know, if they're literally fighting in like a strobe light club, maybe it would make sense. But that combined with the shaky cam, I just think is unnecessary. And I don't know. I just wish they had cut it a better way than that because I think like just seeing the raw action and just letting the camera and the effects do its work is way more effective than this weird stylized shit.
Yeah.
Like you're Ridley Scott, not Akira Kurosawa. Just like
Yeah.
film the fucking action.
Yeah, I do agree. And the one thing that really surprised me about this movie is like it's pretty gory, I feel like. For what I was expecting, like we talked about the scene where the lady gets cut in half. Multiple scenes of like people getting stabbed through their torso and just like spitting out blood, people getting their heads chopped off, limbs
Arrows
chopped
going into their
off.
heads. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of like gore in this movie and they show it like they're not really avoiding it, which a lot of other blockbusters would do. If they're like trying to make a big profit and make a big splash at the box office, they're gonna kind of not show it. But in this one, they're not really hiding anything, which I thought was super unique for a blockbuster of this caliber.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely like a page out of the Braveheart book too. Obviously, there's like decapitations and stuff like that. So I think that's what they were inspired by. But yeah, it seems weird now because like I don't know, there's so few like R-rated blockbusters now. Why can't we just have like a totally batshit ridiculous like R-rated, maybe even
Yeah.
push it to NC-17 blockbuster?
Yeah, I mean, the closest thing you can get today is probably like John Wick or something.
And I'll talk about this a little bit later, but in the director's cut, apparently there's even more of that. Like
Okay.
there's additional scenes, but in addition to that, like the violence within the Coliseum is even more appalling.
Yeah.
But I like that. We'll talk more about the cast specifically, but obviously the casting, they all hit home runs with this one. I guess one of the other things that I wrote down for like Maximus is that like it's a little bit of a revenge story, but it's also just a guy who wants to join his family. I like how he's not just this guy who wants to overthrow and kill like
Yeah.
every single Roman soldier who wronged him. Like this is really just a guy who wants to avenge the death of Marcus Aurelius and obviously his mother and son.
His
And I mean
wife.
like yeah, or his wife and son. But I like how he even makes that explicitly clear. Like when he first confronts Commodus in the Colosseum, he's like, I have one more life left to take, or something along those lines.
Hmm.
And because he's like, he's violent, but he's not like war torn. He's not like this warmonger who just wants Rome to be, this forever violent
Yeah.
tyranny where people just kill themselves till there's no one left.
Yeah, I mean,
And I
he
like how
holds
it's not
back
just
a
a
lot of times in this movie,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
good.
Well, and like even in the very beginning of the movie, he doesn't even want to like fight.
Yeah.
Like when they like hit him with like the bats or like the wooden swords or whatever it is, like he just like takes it on the chin.
Yeah.
I'm just like, damn.
Yeah, I really think Maximus's like whole just rise, fall, and just whole storyline is really good, and it went a different way than I thought it was. Going into this movie, I kind of went in blind. I thought it was just going to be a gladiator the whole movie. I didn't realize he's going to start off as like a army, like war general, and then kind of like have his family get killed, and then go from the lowest of the low and kind of like rise up to power again, fight back against like the injustices of what's going on. But I thought that story was super compelling. The only like I guess my big what I disliked or what I would have liked to seen better I know I've talked about Russell Crowe's not my favorite actor of all time. I think the way he conveys like his emotional scenes where he's mourning his dead wife and dead son, I think are not great.
Oh, like when they're crucified and like burnt
Yeah.
or whatever.
That scene is like messed up. Yeah, he walks back to his house and they're like hanging and they're burnt. And I felt like I should have felt a little bit more of that scene. It is certainly tragic, but I think the way Russell Crowe reacts to it, I don't know if it comes down to the way that scene was written or how he acts, but I think when he's like showing emotion or sadness or tragic like sense, I don't think he conveys it the best. And it made me think like, what if Joaquin Phoenix was in that role? Because I think Joaquin Phoenix could have conveyed the emotion way better than him.
Yeah, I mean, think it would have been interesting to see him as that. Um, has he ever played a movie where he's just like an outright hero? Like, I don't think he's ever played just like an outright good guy. I could be wrong, but like,
He
I've
definitely has
never seen
somewhere.
him.
I think he could have done it. I mean, I think he's perfect in that in the role he is playing as Commodus. I don't wouldn't have changed it, but it just made me think if Joaquin Phoenix was in that scene where he walks back to his house and sees his family like just brutally murdered, I feel like he could have made that scene 2 times better than it was. Because that's like a monumental scene in the movie that kind of flips the script.
I mean, I think that Crow is good for this role. I think it's just what it asks him to be. I think he's a stoic and for the most part emotionally controlled soldier.
Yeah.
I think like I said, there's that one scene where he, meets the remains of his house when they go and kill his family and murder them.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it really just doesn't rely on heavy emotional turmoil for this movie. And I think, he gets like a couple outbursts when he
Yeah.
calls out to the crowd and stuff like that. But I think he has just always been the stoic soldier type, a la Charlie Sheen in Platoon or Clint Eastwood in most of his westerns that he did.
Yeah.
I just think that's what he asks him to do. And he even does some humor himself, like when he talks with Digimon Hansu when they're trapped in like the Coliseum and he asks him like, what are you going to say to your family once you join them? And, he's like, to my son, I'm glad to be reunited with you. And then he's like, to my wife, that's none of your business. It's just like, and honestly, he's been like a decent comic actor. I don't know if you ever watched The Nice Guys, but he always does. He's good with comedic timing for roles like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that's what the script asked from him. And I agree with you to an extent. I don't think he's a very good, I don't think he can cry on command quite as well as a lot of the actors in Hollywood. But I mean, that's just not who he is. And that's not what this movie asks.
Yeah. Fair enough. Digimon Hansu, haven't seen him in anything. I think he's in a lot of Marvel stuff. Is like minor characters or DC movies.
He's in the A Quiet Place movies. He's actually in day one of A Quiet Place. And then
Isn't he in
he's
like
also,
Guardians or something? Or like
uh,
Deadpool or something? Anyway,
I know he's in like Blood Diamond
oh,
with
okay.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
I
Which is like a big
enjoyed him a
one.
lot in this movie, I will say. For like a supporting actor that's not like super monumental to the plot, I think he gave like an A+ performance for what his role was asking. I really like that connection and friendship that he forms with Maximus throughout the movie. And I wish they spent a little bit more time on just like kind of showing them interact because I thought that was because like they're both slave gladiators to Proximo. I wish they showed a little bit more of like the slave gladiators kind of like bonding and connecting. And they certainly do that, it seems, but I wish they kind of fleshed it out a little bit more and gave them more of like a chemistry or relationship building behind the scenes rather than just them building a relationship through their victories in the Colosseum.
I agree with that a little bit. I think that find it a little hard to believe that, they just dumped these like group of 30 people and all of a sudden Russell Crowe just like commands their attention
Yeah.
and just they somehow successfully pull off this massive, like literally David versus Goliath type upset. And yeah, I agree with you on that. And so I was looking at his filmography. So yeah, he is in Marvel. He's the rare Marvel and DC guy. He is in Guardians of the Galaxy, but he's also in Aquaman, Black Adam, Shazam, Captain Marvel, and he's in Fast and Furious 7. So
Oh, he's in
what a
all the
guy.
blockbusters. Okay.
Yeah. And Gran Turismo with our guy Archie Madekwe or whatever
Oh, okay,
from
okay.
Saltburn. Yeah. So I guess more on what we disliked. So there is like there's two massive plot holes, I guess I would say. Um, One of them isn't really a plot hole because I'll explain that later. But the first one is obviously Marcus Aurelius, played by Richard Harris. He's this all-wise and commands respect. He's this elder leader of Rome, trying to lead them into a better place. And Commodus is his son, right? Like that's the thing. Okay, so
yes.
so he knows, and he in fact explicitly tells Maximus, like he says, quote unquote, Commodus is not a moral man, but Marcus Aurelius has, he's his son, and he's basically been lifting him up into this political power in the first place, nepotism and whatnot.
Right.
And so the fact that he's basically just able to murder him and then make it so that he's the second in command of this movie is like, for such a wise and all-knowing man, he should have known better. Because obviously,
He's
like
gonna get killed.
yeah, I feel like I know it's like it was not common and it's still not common to have your kids kill you, obviously, but like you could clearly see it on his face right from the get-go when he's like, "You are not gonna be the emperor." Like he starts like sniveling and tearing up and just bitching. Like that this is gonna happen.
Yeah, but I don't think he really like thought his son was capable of like killing him. I don't think. Because he is kind of pathetic in a way.
I mean, even if that, I still don't understand. Like, at least have a guard there,
Yeah, that's fair.
or more than anything, just like let them know. First of all, have a will, because that guy looks like he's 102. So like, he should have a will, like knowing people should say like, okay, this guy is 102 years old, and I'm going to announce the Gladiator. But before I do that, leave me alone in a room with my son. And in fact, the second that you leave us alone, I'm going to be dead somehow. And I get it. They probably figured he was 102, so fuck it. He probably did have a heart attack, but
yeah,
that's just a little too like, come on, guys. You're the fucking Roman Empire. Like, you're smarter than that.
Yeah, he had the same like secret security that or secret service that Trump had at his rally, it seems like.
I mean, seriously, they just didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it must have been the same group of people because they're just negligent at their job. And yeah, he should have had like a clause in his will or something. But that is a bit of a plot hole. But I think it also comes down to the fact that he didn't think his son was capable of that. And I don't think any parent wants to think of the idea that their like offspring is gonna kill them. Like that's pretty messed up to even have that idea.
I'm not saying like they can't like, just banish your child or think that like they have murderous intentions towards you, but just I don't know. You've had like 20 years to decide whether or not this kid's fit. I feel like you should make it clear like this is not the one. And also like I guess we'll talk about this later, but I find it funny that he just like openly chastises his daughter about that when he talks to her. She's just like, if only you were born a boy, you would have been such a good Caesar. And I'm just like, damn, bro. Like, I get it. Like, women didn't have power back then, but did they just like openly like chastise and like tease their kids like that?
I think so. Yeah, they were super what's misogynistic for sure back then. I mean, we can see this family is not like the most moral or completely their family as Joaquin Phoenix is about to commit some heinous acts upon his sister.
Yeah. I don't know. I just thought that like I would expect that from Joaquin Phoenix though. I wouldn't
Yeah.
expect that from Richard Harris to be like that because it seems like he's supposed to be this not like all knowing necessarily, but he's clearly somebody that has won the people of Rome over. Like they believe in him, whether or not the results are being achieved.
Yeah, that's fair. My biggest dislike with this movie is there are parts of this where it just absolutely drags. I do not think this needed to be a 2.5 hour movie. I would have been happy with 2 hours and probably would have rated it a little bit higher than it was. I still like it, but the opening scene was good. I know you talked about how the way the action was filmed is like pretty choppy, and I do agree with that. I think the idea of the scene's cool and it's a cool way to open the movie. There's been better action opening scenes in blockbusters for sure, but after that like war in the woods that they have, I think this movie drags for like 25 minutes.
Yeah, I just think that it definitely is a little bit like poorly paced, but I think that if they had actually rearranged some scenes or like added some scenes that they didn't in the original, I think that actually could have worked better. And that's
Yeah.
one of my criticisms is for those who don't know, like I don't have like a Guinness Book of World Records in front of me, but if you looked up the director with the most director's cuts, I think Ridley Scott's number one. He's almost always had a director's cut for most of his movies. Even going back to his second film with Alien, he infamously had a director's cut that most people say is superior to the original. Blade Runner, there's been like 5 cuts of Blade Runner, but nowadays, most people default to it's called the final cut, which is what Ridley Scott wanted, in addition to some other things. But he's done this with a lot of his movies. He
Is he
did
just
this.
getting crazy studio interference or something?
That's what I'm. That's yeah. I guess that's the impression that they've been getting, but that's. I'm sort of on the fence with that. Like, I get it to a point. I don't necessarily want a director to have like outlandish creative freedom. Like, for example, I don't know, did Killers of the Flower Moon have to be 250 minutes? No, there definitely could have been stuff that they needed to cut out.
Yeah.
But also, when you have a track record like Ridley Scott, where most people swear on your director's cuts as being the superior movie, I feel like you got to listen to him in this sense. And even with some of his bad movies, like The Counselor with Brad Pitt and Javier Bardem, a lot of people swear that that movie's actually fantastic, the director's cut, in comparison to the theatrical release. Same thing with Kingdom of Heaven with Orlando Bloom and Edward Norton. But this movie also has some of it. It has an extended cut. And I actually like some of the scenes that they showed. Famously, there's some things that are added that make a little bit more sense. So, for example, one of my plot holes that I also talked about that's not really a plot hole is it's never explained in this movie that this man, this war general who is world famous around Rome, is being watched by millions of people.
And they don't know it's him.
And at no point in the movie do they realize, hey, this guy is like our generation's George Patton. You know what I mean? Like, but
that's a good point.
But in the director's cut, there's a scene where Commodus slain, he like orders the hit out on soldiers who know that Maximus escaped the assassination attempt that he put out on him.
Okay.
And he has Quintus, one of them, like his guy who he doesn't give the sword to at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
One of his like commanding officers. He makes them watch them get massacred and murdered throughout all of this. And so that actually would have been an awesome scene if they included, because it shows that like he's pulling these strings to make sure that Maximus is kept underground and that he can't just become this, you know, political paragon where he can just overthrow the government of Rome and use it to his advantage. I don't know why they didn't include that scene. I guess they just didn't know where to stick it in. But I really wish that if they had just rearranged this movie a little bit more and maybe just given Ridley Scott more creative freedom, especially for a director of his caliber, I think this movie actually could have been a lot better.
Yeah, I do agree with that, because the scene where Maximus and like the other gladiators have their huge upset win, and then Commodus is like, I want to go meet this guy. Like they call him the Spaniard, right?
Yeah, the Spaniard.
He's wearing the like MF Doom mask.
Yeah.
But like they're having a conversation, and Commodus somehow does not realize that's Maximus. Like, how?
Yeah.
How does he not realize till he takes the mask? Like, you could even tell with the mask on that it's him.
He probably just didn't believe that he was ever able to escape.
It's like the same way that people don't realize Clark Kent is Superman. Like, dude, he's just wearing glasses.
Or when Aaron Eckhart didn't realize the Joker was the Joker because he was in a nurse's costume.
Yeah, that's a great scene.
Flaws and whatnot. I still think it's a 8 out of 10 movie, all things considered.
Yeah. I also had for another dislike is just the relationship between Commodus and his sister. Please cut that out, really. Ridley Scott, there's something wrong with you, brother, because Napoleon, you were pulling some similar strings from what I was hearing. Just like weird sexual stuff sometimes pops up in these Ridley Scott films, so they need to check that man before they release these movies.
Yeah, he's just he's a weird guy.
I just watched 2 movies yesterday where there may be 2 of the horniest characters in film history that I've seen.
What was
Gladiator and then It Follows, if you've seen that movie.
Oh, where it's like the STD is like a monster.
Yeah, I won't spoil the movie, but one of the characters in the movie is just horny beyond belief. He's so down bad, he'll basically risk his life to get some. my dislikes were just kind of like minor things. But I guess I did talk about Russell Crowe's like conveying of emotion at a crucial emotional point in this movie was lacking, I would say, but it doesn't ruin his performance for me. And I know we're gonna get into Russell Crowe, but I will say this is probably my favorite performance of his that I've seen.
Yeah, so I guess we can transition right into whether or not this is Russell Crowe's best roles.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like I haven't seen as many Russell Crowe movies as I actually thought. I've seen like a decent amount,
Mhm.
but like the movies that he's in are really like more side pieces. Like for example, like he's in Man of Steel, but obviously like
Yeah. He's like the
he's not like a
dad.
gigantic part of that movie. But I can confidently say like of the movies that I've seen, I think this is his best performance. I think he's good in LA Confidential, but I just think he commands much more. And obviously, he doesn't get like all the screen time. They have to split their
Yeah.
screen time three ways with Spacey and Guy Pearce.
This role is like the complete opposite of LA Confidential, to be honest. I would say just because of the way he controls his emotion. In LA Confidential, he cannot control his emotion whatsoever. Whether that be anger or lust, he cannot help himself at all. But in this movie, for what he is, a war general, he keeps it pretty under wraps. Like he holds back at moments where he could easily kill someone and get away with it. He holds back. He shows restraint.
Wow, actually, you know what? One more dislike. You just popped it right in my fucking head. I totally forgot about this, but like throughout this entire movie, he makes it a point to reunite with his wife and kids, but not before he gives Connie Nielsen one big fat fucking kiss
Oh, I did
for
get
10
about that.
seconds. And I'm just like, really?
I
I
feel
get
like
it.
that
Like
was
maybe they had like a fling earlier. That's sort of what they hinted at.
no,
Is
they
the
were like
impression
in
I
a
got.
I think they were in a past relationship.
I think if he had just given her like a kiss on the cheek or something like that, I
Yeah.
could have been okay with that. But it's like borderline Dennis Hopper on Patricia Arquette in True Romance, dude. Like he's doing everything but putting his tongue in her mouth. But anyways, I'll get off that rant. I would confidently say that this is Russell Crowe's best. Now, having said that, I haven't seen some of his most famous stuff. Like I haven't seen A Beautiful Mind, which obviously Oscar-winning movie. I haven't seen like American Gangster or Body of Lies or 310 to Yuma or like Man of Steel, but
The Insider, dude.
yeah, The Insider as well. So like I'm definitely not the right person to be making that call, but I would just say like of the 6 or 7 movies of his that I've seen, I would say that this is probably the best role.
Mhm.
And yeah, honestly, the more I was looking at it though, we sort of talked about how his prime fizzled out, but he actually was in like a lot of good stuff even after like I guess we would say his prime ends at like A Beautiful Mind. I mean, he was still in
Yeah.
like a lot of Scott movies.
Yeah, he was just sprinkled throughout like the mid to late 2000s, like decent roles. But this run he has from like LA Confidential, Insider,
Gladiator.
Gladiator, and then Beautiful Mind is like one of the better primes in Hollywood, I would say. Like 4 major hits, and all of them probably in contention for awards, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's only until like the last couple of years that he's finally just getting in a lot of like side parts.
Yeah.
Like he was in like The Greatest Beer Run with Zac Efron. He was obviously in Thor: Love and Thunder for like 2 seconds. Um, yeah, now he's like the Exorcist guy, I guess.
Yeah, the Pope's Exorcist or whatever.
By the way, did you know that made $80 million at the box office?
I
I'm
don't
not
know a
even
single
kidding.
person that saw that movie.
No, I mean, I didn't either, but like just the fact that that made as much money, kind of a surprise.
I think people just love those Exorcist movies for some reason.
Well, and he loves them too, because he was also in a movie called The Exorcism, which was less successful. Same type of beats.
Yeah.
And also his character name is Anthony Miller, so I can add him to my movies and NFL players
Major draft
all-time list.
bust. Yeah, who's now working at your local Arby's. Go see Anthony Miller. He'll give you a free roast beef sandwich. But I had this as like his second best role. I've probably seen the same amount of Russell Crowe movies as you. I had The Insider as a better role, but I
Okay.
think this is his best like perfectly cast role. I think he fits the role of Maximus super well. I don't know if he fit the role of Jeffrey Wigand in The Insider so much, but he gave like a good, solid, more toned down performance, I would have to say. And I don't know if he won an award for that movie. I know it was in some contention for awards. I know he did win for Gladiator, right? Best
Yeah,
actor.
so I mean, Jesus, yeah, he was nominated for Best Actor 3 straight years. Insider, Gladiator, A Beautiful Mind. He went
Yeah.
1 for 3, but like that's pretty unprecedented. I
Yeah,
actually don't know if that's ever happened.
he was picking his movies at like 100% for like that 4 movie run. And LA Confidential did that had to be in contention for not his performance, but that movie had to have been in contention for awards.
Yeah, it was nominated for Best Picture.
I mean, it's hard to stand out when you're acting alongside Kevin Spacey, who's probably a top 5 actor at that moment in Hollywood,
Yep.
and Guy Pearce, who's on the rise at that moment. So it's really hard to compete when it's a focus on 3 main characters. But A Beautiful Mind, I know, got a lot of awards. That's a great performance. And man, whoever his agent was going off the chain for a couple of years because man, they were selecting movies better than really anyone for that period of time. Like, who has a run like that?
I mean, not unless you're like Tom Cruise, who I don't even think he had that kind of run. Maybe like late 90s to 2000s when he was in like Minority Report, Magnolia, Eyes Wide Shut, Jerry Maguire, and then like the first Mission Impossible. But like
Yeah.
he had like a 10-year, basically a decade run of like every 2 years he would get a SAG nomination. LA Confidential, Insider, Gladiator, Beautiful Mind, Cinderella Man, American Gangster, 3:10 to Yuma, and then Les Miserables. And then he also got nominated for a Golden Globe for Master and Commander,
Is
which
he the
was
worst actor to have? It's weird because he's not a bad actor, but I
no.
feel like his actual skill as an actor does not match his resume.
I think when we'll look back, I mean, obviously, because even like now, I feel like, I don't know, like, who would you say is a more successful actor, Ryan Gosling or Russell Crowe? I would say Russell Crowe, to
Oh,
be
Russell
honest.
Crowe. Has Ryan Gosling ever won an award for anything?
Uh,
I don't think he
I think
has.
he was nominated for supporting actor for Barbie,
Yeah, I mean, he
but
was doing
like,
like rom-coms for a while, and then he kind of dipped his toe into like more serious films with like
was he
Drive.
nominated for Drive? Yeah, I was gonna say.
Drive, I don't know if Drive was like critically received very well. I think that's more of like a cult film.
Okay, so the awards nominated for La La Land. I forgot about
Oh,
that too. La La Land and Half Nelson, which is like a what the fuck. Then yeah, Golden Globe, Blue Valentine, Crazy Stupid Love, and The Ides of March. So I mean, like, yeah, he obviously hasn't won any of these awards except he won the Golden Globe for La La Land. But like, I think he'll eventually maybe get up to there. But and obviously he's a little bit different. He seems like more like he'll do like half comedy, half drama. Where Russell Crowe, I mean, other than like The Nice Guys, ironically with Ryan Gosling, that was probably one of his only straight comedic ventures into film.
yeah. Yeah, I think Russell Crowe will go down as the worst actor with the greatest resume in the history of Hollywood. Now, I'm not saying he's a bad actor. I'm just saying, like, if you compare his resume, it probably puts him above a lot of great actors of all time. It's like almost, I'm trying to think of like what you
I'm
would
trying to look it
compare
up.
this into like sports terms.
I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo is technically a two-time Super Bowl champion.
No, but he's like better than a Jimmy Garoppolo. Like he's like probably a little bit above average actor. I don't want to shit on him too much because he has given good performances. I just don't think his actual skill lines up with
I might
how
be speaking out of like, whatever the opposite of a boomer is, I guess a millennial, but like I might be speaking as a millennial here, but like,
Gen X.
yeah, or Gen X. But I always got the impression that like Terry Bradshaw, it was more
Okay.
like the Steelers, like the Steel Curtain was responsible for his success, even though he won an MVP, but like it always seemed like he was not the main reason why they won the Super Bowl. It was, it was Joe Green and it was like all those linebackers that sort of carried them too.
How about like Troy Aikman? I think Troy Aikman could be a good comp. He's been a part of some great projects, some great teams. He was good, but definitely regarded as overrated. And he's won awards. He's in the Hall of Fame. But a lot of people question that and list him as one of the worst members of the Hall of Fame. I think
Uh,
Russell Crowe could go down similar to that. He's been part of like a lot of great projects, won awards, will go into the acting Hall of Fame, but will be regarded as one of the worst in there.
I don't know. There's not really an apt comparison.
I don't want to say that Russell Crowe's a
He's
bad
not
actor.
bad. I know
I don't
that's what I'm
think he's
saying, though.
bad. I think he's average to above average. I'm just saying, like, the projects he's in and his accolades don't exactly match up with his acting abilities. I just probably am lower on him than the consensus.
There's some people who argue like Nicolas Cage because he'll have like some roles where he's just fucking knockout, but then there's other roles where I'm just like, what the fuck are you trying to convey onto this screen?
He has so many projects that it's like just hard to evaluate him because he gives you 100 movies every year.
Yeah, there's
It's
that
just
too,
and
obviously.
Nicolas Cage is unlike any other actor. He's so unique in the way that he approaches roles and the performances he gives. You don't even know like what the fuck's going on. Like that guy, we could just probably do a podcast on just Nicolas Cage and still be confused about him by the end of it.
So we can go down further into the cast. So I want to go to Oliver Reed. I've been very excited to fucking talk about this guy. So I've known Oliver Reed for actually quite a little bit of time. He started off, he's a British man. He was in a lot of like my dad's favorite movies. Like he loves this horror movie called Burnt Offerings with Karen Black and Betty Davis, where they own like a haunted house and stuff like that. He's also in The Brood, which is my favorite Cronenberg movie ever. And he's like a divorced husband in that movie. So like I've known him for quite a while, but this guy is maybe the most famous Hollywood drunk to ever exist. Other than like maybe George C. Scott can give him a run for his money, but this is fucking crazy. So Proximo is supposed to be like the inspirational character for Maximus. When he's down and out, he's the guy who tells him about Rome and what the dream was. Even like fighting alongside Marcus Aurelius, he has like his wooden sword.
Yeah.
And the original script actually had him surviving this movie. Why, I have no fucking idea. Because like when he's dead, like there's actually a scene, I don't know if you noticed it, but the last scene where he's behind bars and his face looks a little shadowy, like he's dead. That's all CGI. That was just probably took a decent chunk out of the budget too. And you can tell like on a rewatch, but the first time I saw it, I just didn't know. But apparently he had like this clause with Ridley Scott. He was like, I'm not gonna drink, like I'll keep my act clean, blah blah blah. And yeah, that just didn't fucking happen. Like it's kind of a miracle that he was ever like gonna survive in the first place, because he is, first of all, he's 61 years old in this movie. He looks way older than that.
Yeah, I thought he was like 70.
Supposedly what happened, David Hemmings, who plays another character in this movie, he's the guy with like the weird eyebrows and stuff like that. He's
goofy.
Like the announcer. Yeah, but he was one of his friends. Like they used to act together in a lot of roles. But he said supposedly Oliver Reed met a group of sailors and he just like challenged them to a drinking match head on.
What? A drinking match?
Yeah. No, so this was like, this guy was a drunk. The most famous story I could find was there was a rumor that he and 36 of his friends, they never specified the time, but either way, this is ridiculous. Him and 36 of his friends, so that's 37 people, drank 60 gallons of beer, 32 bottles of scotch, 17 bottles of gin, 4 crates of wine, and a bottle of baby sham, which is ridiculous. So Reed himself said he dispelled that claim. He, however, did say that he claimed that he drank 106 pints of beer in a 2-day span. That just, I don't know how you could ever afford to sign somebody like that. And I love Oliver Reed. I actually think he's one of my favorite British actors. But with just the record that he had to be signed onto a big movie like this, it's just remarkable. And honestly, that was the problem that George C. Scott had with a lot of his movies going into like the 80s, is people just couldn't like fund him. I remember listening to a podcast on the internet that said like he would have like designated drinking days throughout filming just so he could like feed his alcohol demons or whatever. And I imagine Oliver Reed was on that same boat.
Didn't Martin Sheen have that during the filming of Apocalypse Now too?
Oh, I mean, they were all fucked up on that set. That was like, he was probably one of the more normal ones, but there were people who just like...
Dennis Hopper was on that set. That's all that needs to be said.
Yeah. Yeah, if we ever do a podcast on that, I might rewatch the documentary about it. But I mean, I guess just a little tidbit for that movie. There was literally a guy, it never made it into the cameras, but for like they needed dead bodies to display, and one of the guys was he literally grave robbed people. Like that's how fucking crazy things were on that movie. But anyways, yeah, I just can't physically imagine how how Oliver Reed was signed onto this project.
Yeah, why did Ridley Scott even approach him to take this role? Because I'm looking at his filmography and it looked like he hadn't done anything since like the 70s or 80s, I guess.
Yeah, like he was in like The Devils in the 70s. He was in some other movies like that, but
Yeah.
there's no evidence. He didn't show that he was going to be able to handle himself, and obviously that didn't fucking happen.
He died in 1999, known for his Hellraiser lifestyle.
Yeah, so like I guess the last one that I could see besides Gladiator, obviously, was the Adventures of Baron Munchausen, and even that was 11 years before this movie was starting filming. Oh, I don't know. Like, I like him in this movie. I actually really love the Proximo character, but yeah, this guy is wow. This guy did not take care of his body
He's a Hall
whatsoever.
of Fame drinker, dude.
He looks like what Russell Crowe looks like now. He even looks better than that, though. Like
Yeah.
Russell Crowe even looks healthier than what Proximo was in this movie. He's in some good stuff. Yeah, he's a great actor, but couldn't get off the bottle. I guess we've said enough about Richard Harris. I mean, I've already mentioned he's like Dumbledore. He was in Unforgiven. He was in the Patriot Games. And I guess the one thing I will say is I would be interested if they ever did like a Marcus Aurelius prequel or something like those, or like if they just made a movie where it was him and like how he laid claim to Rome, how he took over or something like that. But otherwise, I mean, I think he's about in it for as long as he needs to be. And that's normally what he was as a character actor. He was always like a supplemental guy,
Yeah.
never really the main person. But yeah, I think said enough about that for the cast. And then
What do you think about Connie Nielsen?
I think she's good. I'm actually excited for her. I was going to talk more about it in the Gladiator 2 trailer reaction because I'm excited to see what she is going to do. She's the only returning member of the cast,
Mhm.
obviously. I mean, they're all either dead. Maybe Dijman Hansu will come back, but I'm excited to see her. And that's the thing about Ridley Scott. Like, he's always been great with writing female characters. He was
Yeah.
doing that before it was cool. Obviously, he did it with Alien, Ellen Ripley. He did it in Thelma and Louise. He did it with G.I. Jane. And this is obviously no exception. And so I'm glad that, like, she's obviously not in a huge position of power, even though she's literally like the daughter to the emperor. Um, but like, she holds her own against these people and she doesn't take any bullshit, even from her own brother and all the dumb shit he's doing.
Yeah. I
But
mean, this was definitely her breakout role, I would say, too, because I mean, the first big thing she was in is like Devil's Advocate. She's the one that's like tempting Keanu Reeves. There's one scene where he's like having sex with Charlize Theron, but he's also like having visions that it's Connie Nielsen. She's like
okay.
tempting him. It's like I'm pretty sure it's Al Pacino's like girlfriend in that movie.
It seemed like she had like a little mini run. Um, I liked her in Rushmore. She was actually funny as like Mrs. Calloway. She's like smoking a cigarette out her car in that movie. And then obviously Gladiator and whatnot. And then 1 Hour Photo, which I
Oh
haven't seen,
yeah.
but I know you have.
Yeah, she's fine in that movie, but that's all about Robin Williams, really.
Yeah. And I guess she's in the Wonder Woman movies too, so she's had a bit of momentum going into it. But like in between 1 Hour Photo and like the first Wonder Woman movie, I don't know any of these movies except for Nymphomaniac. But that's not a role I would bow down for.
That's despicable movie making right there.
I've only
That's Lars von Trier, right? It has to be.
uh-huh. Yeah.
Yep. Lars von Trier needs to be investigated right this moment.
Yeah, the third film in the Depression trilogy after Antichrist and Melancholia.
I mean, the fact that there's 2 volumes to it is just like, were you really not satisfied with the first one? Did you really need to dig deeper?
I'm just surprised that he got all those people to sign on. Shia LaBeouf, Uma Thurman, William Dafoe, Connie Nielsen, Christian Slater, Jamie Bell. Like, come on.
He definitely has like dirt on like half of Hollywood or something. Otherwise, that guy would have been in a prison cell by now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any answers to that, but good for you, Connie Nielsen.
Yeah.
And then I guess, yeah, the Hans Zimmer masterclass. So I just fucking love this score. I can't really describe why, but I just fucking, I don't know. Whenever I need like a pick me up, I just listen to like Honor Him or some of the other tracks that are on the Gladiator soundtrack. We thought about like figuring out how to discuss this, but we basically just said let's make a Mount Rushmore of all the Hans Zimmer's big hits. And I guess I'll go first for this. So I actually have Gladiator number one. I just really fucking
Okay.
listen to this all the time, whether I'm like studying or just like need to pick me up. I just like this is always a default for me. I actually have it downloaded in my Apple Music. It's like the first thing I ever downloaded was just the entire soundtrack. So I really fucking love this. So that's my Abraham Lincoln, I guess.
Hmm.
George Washington would be Interstellar. I really like that a lot. I
Okay.
love how they use the, I think it's From Time or whatever it is, where like they use the ticking and incorporate that
Yeah.
into the scene when like Anne Hathaway and Matthew McConaughey are trying to like rush off of the planet and do all that stuff. I just think it's genius and I really love that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my Thomas Jefferson would be the Pirates of the Caribbean. I just think that's iconic. I mean, obviously it takes a little bit of the pages out of the playbook of Gladiator, but it's still an iconic theme, and I know the theme all the way through, even though I've never actually seen a single movie in its entirety. And so that's just a testament to Hans Zimmer himself. And then I guess my Theodore Roosevelt would be The Last Samurai. I actually really like that soundtrack too. And I guess if anybody's coming off of our Top Gun Maverick podcast, if you need a new Tom Cruise movie to watch, put that on your watch list because that's just a really underrated movie through and through. True Romance or something like that.
That's a dishonorable mention. The xylophone score, worst part of that movie for sure. But I guess I'll have to say Interstellar and Inception just go hand in hand for me. I mean,
Oh, okay.
they're definitely different, but those two are guaranteed locks on there. Those are probably two of my favorite like movie soundtrack or movie scores of all time, I have to say. And I'm Interstellar's probably gets the edge, but
Yeah.
I'll have to say those two. Um, Dark Knight, I forgot he did Dark Knight. It was like a joint collaboration between him and someone else. I can't remember who it was. But I mean, that one's super good. And I guess you could just pretty much put all the Dark Knight ones because they all kind of overlap. But I'll just choose the
Yeah.
Dark Knight if I have to choose one. And then for my last one, it was coming down to Gladiator or Pirates of the Caribbean because I think like they're so similar. They're so
Okay.
similar. This is definitely a precursor for Pirates of the Caribbean, which came, I think the first one comes out 4 years later, 5 years later. But I guess I'll give Gladiator because it came out first. And the Pirates of the Caribbean is just, I don't know if it has as much range of a soundtrack. Like it has the like main theme, which is super iconic and probably more iconic than the Gladiator main theme. But
Definitely.
Gladiator soundtrack has multiple tracks throughout the movie that I enjoyed. Where Pirates of the Caribbean, I just point to the main one. Gladiator is more consistent, so I'll give it to that. But Interstellar and Inception are my clear top two. Dark Knight's three, Gladiator four, Pirates of the Caribbean five, True Romance not listed.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
One I actually kind of like, but is in a horrible movie, is the Batman versus Superman soundtrack.
Never
I
seen it
I
or
did like the score for that movie. I think that was also a
heard it.
collaboration.
I think that there's a lot you could have picked. I mean, obviously, The Lion King is one of his more famous ones. I think he won for that, actually. Some people like Dune. I'm not one of them.
No, Dune's annoying as hell.
The Da Vinci Code, Rain Man, although that's more along the lines of what's it called? Like uh True Romance
He's playing
than
the
it is.
xylophone again.
I mean, yeah, a little bit. And then obviously like Top Gun Maverick to anybody who likes it. But
Top Gun Maverick, I did like that score.
yeah, I wouldn't put that in my Mount Rushmore
No,
though. Then lastly, the Gladiator 2 Expectations.
low.
Yeah, so I mean, the trailer came out, I think it was 10 days ago, and it was an instant watch for me because I was curious. I remember seeing like Pedro Pascal was signed onto the project, Denzel Washington was signed onto the project, and yeah, the trailer's just been getting ripped apart. I mean, I haven't seen like a single positive like uniform reception to this movie. It seems like a lot of people are saying like why is Denzel Washington like they just they just took Alonzo from Training Day and just like teleported him into Roman
Basically.
Empire times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they just like his fame and his charisma got him to this part. Because that's the thing with Denzel Washington. It seems like at certain points he'll just like be put in a movie and like however like ludicrous it is about his casting in the movie, like he'll sometimes just like ham it in.
What if this
Like,
movie actually turns out to be like super good though?
I mean, I'm a little interested as to how the Lucius storyline is going to be. Obviously, now that he's grown up, his father and obviously all of his relatives have been slain at this point except for Connie Nielsen, but
Yeah.
like he's basically just been growing up in this turmoil for Rome. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering to see how it'll be. I'm not super high on Paul Mescal as a
I've
lead man,
never
but
seen him before.
he's pretty new. I mean, he was in, I think it was, is it After Sun that he was in? And then he was in, yeah, All of Us Strangers and After Sun. I've actually heard After Sun is like one of the best movies of the decade. But I mean, he's pretty new. He's like a newcomer to all of this stuff. So I'm willing to keep some optimism in there.
Yeah.
Pedro Pascal is also like, I don't know. I've never seen him play a role like this. I don't know how to feel though. It's interesting, but more than anything, I'm excited to see what Connie Nielsen is going to bring back to the
Yeah.
table. I hope she gets a much bigger role. Not that she didn't have like a decent enough role in this, but obviously, as I mentioned before, Ridley Scott is great with writing female characters, and I think this is going to be no exception. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, this is getting ripped apart. I think
It's
I
yeah.
think it'll be an average movie. I don't think it'll be a fantastic movie, but I think that like most people would just be like, what is Denzel Washington doing here?
I think it's more like, what is this movie doing here? I think Hollywood's just doing, I don't know if it's, I know we just did Top Gun. I don't know if a lot of movies and filmmakers are trying to cash in on like legacy sequels right now or something. Because I mean, we have Twisters coming out right now too. Like these just sequels that don't really make that much sense. I mean, Top Gun, at the time, people were like not really thinking it was necessary or that it was even going to be good. And then, of course, it surpassed everyone's expectations and blew it out of the water. But like Twisters, I'm hearing is fine. Was it necessary? Probably not. It's more of like a Glenn Powell, let's see what you can give us movie. And then
Yeah,
Gladiator 2 seems like it's trying to cash in on these legacy sequels that are kind of happening out of the blue. To me, watching Gladiator, I thought there was going to be a knowing that Gladiator 2 was coming out before I watched it. I'm like, okay, this is somehow going to lead into Gladiator 2 or leave the door open for something next to happen. Finishing the movie, I'm like, they wrapped everything up. I don't think there's anything more that needs to be done in this universe. A lot of the main characters got killed that I really cared about. Like, what more is there to do besides make money?
yeah. I
I
think
mean,
it'll
I love
be.
Denzel Washington,
Mhm.
but certainly not appropriate casting for this movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still just a little optimistic just because they have so many people. Like Ridley Scott is attached to it, so he's like the heart of this movie. So I'm interested, but yeah, I still think it'll be average. I think it'll be better than like Napoleon, for example, but I think it won't be like one of Ridley Scott's standouts. I also think it's funny how like Russell Crowe keeps getting bombarded with questions about Gladiator too. I saw like an interview recently. He's like, I don't know why you people are asking me about this because I am dead in this movie. So it doesn't fucking matter. So I guess people
Yeah.
just didn't watch the movie or they just don't know. But
It's so dumb because yeah, none of the main characters like survived or need to have their story told any further. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
yeah,
There was nothing in the first one that said that they need to have a sequel. Nothing at all. This comes out of the blue. Like, I don't think people were expecting a Gladiator 2 ever. Were they? Was there like
no.
was there like people wanting this?
I mean, when you have a movie as successful as this, like this was the second highest grossing movie at the box office.
Yeah.
I mean, that almost always you'll get a sequel.
Yeah.
Like, unless it's like True Lies or something like that, where the director or whatever just doesn't want to be on board with it.
Yeah.
Most of the time you'll get a sequel, even if it's like the worst movie ever made,
Yeah,
which
but
could
it
happen.
it's weird because it's coming out 24 years later. It's not like they didn't set up a sequel. They didn't set up a trilogy. They set up nothing, and it's coming out 24 years later. It would have made sense if it comes out 2 years later, 3, 4, 5 years later, but 24 is just like clearly a cash grab.
I guess we'll see. I think it'll be okay. I don't think we'll do a podcast episode on it, but I'm not gonna make any promises yet.
Yeah, I hope it's good. I mean, Napoleon is his most recent film, and that didn't really get the best review. So this is a moment for Ridley Scott to kind of catch people back and to have people, I mean, obviously people appreciate him, but for him to prove that he can still make high quality films.
Yeah, he has been a little bit out of a cold streak lately, just between Napoleon, obviously House of Gucci was like terribly received
Yeah.
with Jared Leto and Al Pacino. And The Last Duel was like actually a pretty well received movie, but it just made nothing at the box office. So I wouldn't say he has like an axe to grind, but I don't know. It'd be nice if he ended on a better note than House of Gucci or Napoleon, I guess.
He's definitely on a cold streak.
All right, coming up on our next segment, we got the draft and cut portion of our podcast where we draft and cut the best and the worst that this movie has to offer. See you on the next one. All right, so this is the draft and cut segment. Connor had the first pick last time for the Top Gun Maverick episode, so I'll start with the first pick. And with that, I'll take Joaquin Phoenix just because I think he wins this movie ultimately. He obviously has vicious intentions for Rome and for the people of Rome in this movie, but he's a little bit more complex than that too. Obviously, he was deprived of love from his own family, and that led him to this point. Obviously, he gets rejected multiple times from Marcus Aurelius. He just loves him like a son, but he can't bear to tell him that he's like a complete failure and fuck up. Even like when they're having that very emotional confrontation, Marcus Aurelius deflects it onto himself. He says like, your faults as my son are my failures as a father. And from that point on, I mean, in the beginning of the movie, he's a little bit more of like a pompous ass. But from that point on, dude, he's just a fucking vicious, psychotic, absolute loon. But I love it. I mean, I just think he's great. Like I said, he has some humor. I guess I didn't talk about the specific scene, but when Marcus Aurelius or when Maximus has the first fight in the Colosseum and they beat all the chariots up, they cut to parts where like Commodus is just mockingly looking at them. He's just like sticking his tongue out. Yeah, like he's Stu from Scream, or he's just like, ooh, like wow. Yeah. He's just like, oh, this is all an act. And yeah, I like that he has these complexities to him. Obviously, he's vicious and evil and whatnot, but I like how they make him seem a lot more like it was just a failure of his family, but also like some of the things he does is obviously unapologetic, of course.
Yeah, I think we know someone who has this like Joaquin Phoenix's best performance by far. So I think everyone like loves or at least respects this performance.
Yeah.
So
to put him on the map, really.
Yeah. All right. So for my first pick, I'll give it to the first fight in the actual Roman Colosseum with Maximus and the other gladiator like slave people, where they pull off the huge upset. The whole crowd is like completely shocked. Obviously, Commodus is like, it's not supposed to go like this. It was like a written in victory for the other gladiators they were fighting who were undefeated. Like this wasn't supposed to happen. And people don't know how to react at first. Like the whole crowd goes silent, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, it's just like, this is like the fucking like, I'm trying to think what a comparison would be. This is like a Division III team beating like Alabama in their prime or something. And
Appalachian State against Michigan.
Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah, and Ann Arbor's just completely silent, does not know how to react to it. But I think that's the best scene in the movie, I would have to say. And then Commodus comes down to confront, he wants to meet the gladiator, the Spaniard, Russell Crowe. And it is kind of stupid how he doesn't recognize who that is. I mean, he's wearing a mask but you can still tell who that is. I mean, they have scenes in the movie prior to this where they're talking. They know what he sounds like, what he looks like. So anyone would know that's him. But it's still a cool scene where this is the first time where they interact and confront each other after his family's gotten killed and everything's gone to hell for him, basically. So I thought that was a super compelling scene where he takes his mask off and is like, it's a pretty intense scene, but also tons of great action, a great like blockbuster scene that just would have been awesome to see in the theater. So I got to give it to that. My favorite scene, probably by far.
Yeah, even though it has the gas tank underneath it.
Yeah, but I didn't see that till I was just doing some research after the movie. I would have never seen that. And I don't really care. I just thought it was funny. I know there's historical inaccuracies, obviously, but if it was 100% accurate to history, it would not be nearly as entertaining, probably. You got to have some leeway for fiction in a movie like this.
Yeah, well, and as you know, Ridley Scott does not give a shit about historical accuracy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's literally a scene where in Napoleon in the movie, he goes up to the pyramid of the Great Pyramid of Giza, and then he just fucking blows the top off of the pyramid, which never happened, obviously. Most people would fucking know. But like Ridley Scott is basically his mentality with historical accuracy is basically just, were you there? No. Okay, shut the fuck up. I'm filming my movie.
Yeah, I respect it.
I respect it too. I mean, listen, it's all in service of entertainment. He's not
Yeah.
trying to film a documentary. So I'm perfectly okay with it. With my second overall pick, I'm doing the second Gladiator Coliseum fight. I think it has all the action you could ask for. It has the tigers flying out from underneath the sand pitch, which I will admit is ridiculous. It has the reigning champion challenging Maximus with like that weird iron cast mask.
The mask he like brings down. That
Yeah,
was pretty cool.
I wonder if that's the same one they used in Kingdom of Heaven for Edward Norton's character in that movie, because it looked pretty similar. I could be wrong, but obviously Ridley Scott directed both of those. So I was wondering if there was any inspiration from that. But more importantly, in addition to the great action that happens and all the cuts and violence, I love that it perfectly illustrates Maximus and his character and how he defies any oppression from Commodus and just the powers that be. Because he waits to see, because this is what they did, you would put their thumb up or down to figure out whether or not the loser of the battle gets to live or die. And Russell Crowe openly defies the orders of Commodus, and much to his surprise, rather than putting that as a political enemy or anything like that, to just defy and not provide the audience the carnage that they paid for, he ultimately becomes the sympathetic figure in all of Rome. And it's here that like he starts to become this legendary figure, whereas before he was just a regular gladiator, a fighting man.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is really like the turning point in the movie where it's like, okay, this might be possible. He might actually get to fight or inspire the crowd of people to get him to fight Commodus at the end of the movie. And sure enough, that happens. And sure enough, he wins, even with his body weakened from the stabbing and whatnot. So I think it's just like the ultimate turning point of the movie.
Did Commodus actually think he could win that fight? Bro, he just gets his ass handed to him on a platter.
I kind of wish he put up a better fight, but I mean, I don't know. It seems like the movie can't decide whether or not he's like trying to be a trained warrior or if he's just like a weak sniveling bitch. It just sort of like picks and chooses when that happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't tell if he's supposed to actually be proficient at fighting because it doesn't really seem like he is most of the time. And obviously in that scene he's not, but then again, like Maximus is like portrayed as the greatest fighter of all time.
Yeah, I think he just thought like if nothing else, one of his soldiers would give him a sword to finish him off, and obviously that didn't happen. Quintus didn't help him, and none of the other soldiers helped him. And so obviously he gets his ass handed to him. So I think he thought like he would at least have the public opinion, but didn't happen, and he gets a knife in his throat.
I think all the scenes in the Colosseum, all those scenes are the best in the movie.
I mean, yeah, it's what people paid for.
You took my second pick, which was Joaquin Phoenix, or it was supposed to be my first pick. So I'll ad lib and give it to another actor, and it's not Russell Crowe, it's not Connie Nielsen, it's not the other guys we were talking about. It's Djimon Hounsou.
Yeah.
I know you had brought his name up in a previous podcast, and I'm like, who the hell is this guy? I'd never heard of him. And I was going through his filmography, and I'm like, damn, this guy's kind of got a stacked list of movies he's been in, like a lot of movies that made a lot of money, but I don't recognize him from anything. Maybe if I watched him again, I would recognize it, but I really liked his character, and I was disappointed. I talked about it earlier, how they didn't flesh out his relationship with Maximus more, because obviously Djimon's character has a ton of respect for him and basically welcomes him in immediately. They kind of he attaches himself to Maximus early on when Maximus first becomes a gladiator. Like he walks up to him and tries to talk to him. Maximus kind of brushes him off, but we see their friendship build more. I mean, they have like a meal together. I do wish they built it out more because I think Digimon could be an interesting character to see in the second one even more in like a more expanded role. I would have liked to see him like escape and see more of his backstory because they don't really get into it too much. But he's definitely like the most charismatic and interesting character in that little gladiator camp that they have. I don't know. I don't have a specific thing. I don't think it was like a Emmy or a Oscar winning performance, but I really did enjoy his character in every scene he was in when they're just kind of like shooting the shit. I just thought he was a good actor, and I think he could have been. I know he's in a ton of like we were talking about superhero movies. I would have liked to see him in more serious roles as like a supporting character, like maybe in the vein of like a Don Cheadle or something. I haven't looked at the full casting of the second one, but I think he definitely deserves to be in there.
Well, and especially since he's been like much more successful since this movie came out. I think he's earned it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, some more continuity apart from just Connie Nielsen would be good. Moving on to the cut segment of this, I would say I just gotta be honest, just cut the opening battle scene. I mean, I don't totally need it. Um, I get it's to show that like Maximus can galvanize the troops and fight for justice and whatnot, but this whole movie shows us that. And again, like it just has the shaky action scene, lots of choppy editing and shaky cam, and it just doesn't fit the format and the style of the entire rest of the movie after this.
Yeah.
It's still cool. Like obviously it shows the scope and the scale of this movie, but I don't know. I think if you would have just started with him going with Marcus Aurelius, and then Marcus Aurelius gets murdered, and then he gets shipped off and killed, and then his family, or he tries to get killed, and then his family gets murdered, and then whatnot. I think that would have sped it up, and obviously you complained about the runtime, so that would have easily shaved off like a good 10-15 minutes.
That scene reminded me of those like Civil War reenactments they do on like the History Channel.
Oh, like on fucking, I don't know, like TBS or like those channels.
Yeah, where it's like it's
Or like the
better
History
than
Channel,
that.
I should say.
It's better than that. It
Not much
reminded me
better.
not much better. It was kind of dumb. For an opening scene, it didn't pull the movie did not pull me in until Russell Crowe became a gladiator. The
Yeah.
opening scene of a movie like this should pull you in instantly, I feel like, and it kind of missed the mark. Not that it's a bad scene, but it's not even in the top 10 scenes of the movie.
I don't know. I just like compared to how the rest of the movie does their action a lot better, I just don't understand why they went to all these cheap tactics to edit the movie and cut the movie the way they did. It just doesn't make sense in the context of the movie.
What if they started the movie with Russell Crowe already as a gladiator? And then
Uh
kind of like showed the other stuff in like flashbacks.
oh, like if they went like non-linear,
Yeah.
Memento, a gladiator story. He
Yeah.
can't remember that that his wife and son were murdered, and he has to
Yes.
figure that out.
He has amnesia because he got hit over the head with like a shield or something.
He has to kill every Commodus in Rome because he can't remember.
Yeah.
And he works with Digimon Hansu, who becomes Joe Pantaleono.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Lenny.
Or I guess Proximo would be Joey Pants in that movie. But yeah. I think the non-linear stuff would have been better, honestly.
Yeah. I don't
That would
know.
have been cool.
It would have been interesting to see because I mean just personally,
Well, because
I
then
didn't
they could have hooked you in quicker too.
yeah, I would have liked that more. Like a little bit more fast paced. This movie takes its time, which is fine. I know a lot of people like that, but in blockbusters, I don't really like that.
I mean,
But
obviously you want to get right to the good stuff.
it is an epic movie, and I think a lot of epics are like that.
It
It's
could be
not,
cut a little bit better, but
yeah.
I
For my
mean, they do drag.
for my cut, I talked about it already, and I'll probably talk about it more after this, but Commodus making moves on his sister, cut it out. Those scenes were like super uncomfortable and were just didn't really lead to anything. It
Yeah.
was pointless to me. It was just to show, I guess, that Commodus is a fucking weirdo, but we already knew that. We already
Yeah.
know he's kind of pathetic by the scene with his dad earlier in the movie. we know he's kind of a loser who wants to gain power because he's power hungry and he doesn't feel validated or loved by anyone around him. He's just kind of a bitch. But not that his character is bad. Joaquin Phoenix plays it super well to make me think like that. But I don't care about those scenes. I didn't like them. It made me feel uncomfortable. Ridley Scott did. I don't know if he does like a brother sister thing in Napoleon, but I know there was lots of weird like sexual stuff that I've heard about that movie with Joaquin Phoenix once again. So maybe this is something Joaquin Phoenix is adding into the character. But I thought it was like weird, unnecessary. It didn't really lead to anything. I just felt bad for Connie Nielsen.
Napoleon is like has maybe the worst sex scene I've ever seen in my life. Like if you think Commodus is a bitch, and that's the thing too, like the French critics for Napoleon were so appalled by this movie because it made Napoleon look like such a bitch. He's at least on par with, like, in terms of bitch level, they're at least on par, but I think Napoleon's worse. But yeah, that concludes our draft and cut segments. On our next side, we're going to do the superlatives, where we give this movie the awards it really does deserve. We'll see you on the next side. Our Scoreboard Cinema Superlative segment. As always, we kick it off with the Russell Wilson Award for Who Let Them Cook in this scene. And I know we've been talking about it a lot, but it's got to go to Commodus. He has the hots for his sister, man. He does every move in the book to try and pull Connie Nielsen. And yeah, like I said, I mean, Connor mentioned it earlier. I've mentioned it. It's just not very fun to watch. And, you know, it shows he's a sick guy. There's plenty of other scenes that prove that he's a sick guy. I don't know. I wish, like, if they had done it, just make it more subtle and just, like, I don't know. I don't need, like, a makeout scene where he tries to, like, kiss her. Like, that's just a little too much.
He tries to put his hand in her mouth or whatever.
Yeah, like, if you want to imply it, okay, whatever. But, like, I don't know. It's a long movie to begin with. I mean, it's a fucking 150-minute movie anyways, so I don't need 5 minutes of incest. I don't want to talk about that shit anymore. We've talked about it so much already.
Yeah. My pick for the Russell Wilson Award for Who Let Them Cook. I didn't want to give it to that because we've talked about it so much. And this is like a literally Who Let Them Cook. It's the scene where Maximus is sitting down having a meal with Dijman and Hagen. I don't know what the actor's name is. And they're just like shooting the shit. And then Maximus gets up to go get a meal. Like, who literally let them cook that meal? Because they were like insinuating that it was poisoned or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, that when that scene first happened, when he's getting up to go get food, I'm like, I already know they're gonna like hint towards that being poisoned or something. Like he's gonna get assassinated. So I'm like, how dumb are you to like couldn't you have gotten food from somewhere else? Like they're getting it from like a public, I don't even know what it was, like a ancient version of like a food court or something. Like why are you getting food from there knowing your reputation at the time and how like Commodus wants you dead? Like you're in deep shit. Why would you take food from a public area in Rome?
I mean, yeah, simpler times, simpler people, I guess.
Like it didn't even seem like he considered. I mean, he did consider when he sat back down, but they're just like joking about it and not taking it that seriously. I thought it was kind of dumb.
Yeah, that's like a short scene though.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, it's not like bad. I just thought it was like kind of goofy or dumb.
The Shannon Sharpe Nightcap Award for most out-of-pocket scene in the movie.
Incest scene again.
Yeah, so I mean, I talked about it a little bit, but if you were only born a man, you would have made such a great Caesar. Like, okay. I get it. Back in the day, women didn't have power, but like, I don't know. First of all, it's like not subtle at all. Like, we get it. It's a Roman Empire, shit like that. Like, it just didn't happen back then. It didn't happen long after that either. But it's just like, you can clearly tell that Marcus Aurelius has so much respect for his daughter, but then it's like such a backhanded compliment for him to say that to her. It's like, dude, just, I don't know, take care of your daughter. You don't have to just like tease her like that. It's just, I don't know, it's fucked up. It's like, how you weren't a good father to your son. Can you at least be a good father to your own fucking daughter, who's actually like a very noble person?
I guess
not.
They didn't consider that bad back in the day or something. I don't know. They had different socially acceptable things.
I mean, it's not even that it's bad. It's obviously bad, but it's like so matter of fact. It's like telling a woman in like 1930s, just like, you have no rights. It's like, okay, I'm sure she can probably fucking understand that at this point. She's not like a 15-year-old girl. She's a fucking, like, I don't know, assuming she's a 20-something.
Yeah, probably 25, 30.
Yeah, like she knows the socio-political state of Rome at this point.
Yeah.
It's just like it is what it is. I don't know. I was like, damn, Marcus Aurelius. That's like the one thing about his character. I'm just like, really? Like you're such a likable guy. Why the fuck did you have to ruin it in that one sentence?
Yeah. He's just, yeah, a terrible father, but good at everything else, I guess. My pick for the Shannon Sharp Nightcap Award. I don't even need to explain it anymore. It's just Joaquin Phoenix and Connie Nielsen. That's all.
Okay. All right, I guess we can move on to the Shea Wiggum Award for the biggest that guy. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna say Richard Harris. I mean, he was the old guy forever. Um, Obviously, the first two Harry Potter movies, he was Albus Dumbledore.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, he was just obviously the superior Dumbledore. I thought Michael Gambon was okay, but I just always liked his interpretation better.
Yeah,
compared to the later guys. He was a welcome cameo in Unforgiven as English Bob. Patriot Games, he's holding his own against Harrison Ford. And yeah, he was always just like either the wise old man or the smart ass in a lot of the movies he was in. And, he really lived out his career. I mean, he died, I think, 2 or 3 years after this. Obviously, that's why he got replaced for Harry Potter. But got to give it to Richard Harris for being the old guy.
They got a lot of old motherfuckers in this movie. There is a lot of people dying around this time from this movie.
Yeah, but I think Richard Harris was just old age.
Yeah.
Oliver Reed, that shit was self-inflicted. I don't care what you say. Even if I think it was technically he died of like heart problems or liver problems, but we all know why.
Yeah. There's nothing up to debate there. But for my pick for the Shea Wiggum Award for that guy, I'm going down the cast list to Tommy Flanagan, who plays Cicero. This guy, this is just such an obscure character, but I know him from the game. He plays the taxi driver, the crazy taxi driver in that movie. And he's recognizable because he has like the scars on his face in that movie. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I definitely know this. When I was watching it, I'm like, he's in some David Fincher movie. I didn't know if it was like The Game or Fight Club. I knew it was one of those two, but then I recognized it. He's also in Sin City. I don't remember who he plays. And he's in Guardians of the Galaxy, maybe with Digimon Hansu.
That would be crazy if they acted together.
He's also in Braveheart too, so I guess he was doing these like epics around this.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, like I knew you were gonna pick this as soon as I saw it.
Yeah.
Honestly, so I didn't know who it was, but the reason why I even clicked on his character, like when I clicked on his Wikipedia page, I thought that was Skeet Ulrich. Like I literally thought,
yeah,
because I was like,
yeah,
he has like the facial structure, he has the eyes, he has like the fucking hair for it too. So I was like.
Yeah.
But also like the timelines wouldn't add up because he looks so much older than Billy Loomis did because Scream's 4 years before this, obviously. But I was like, is that not Skeet Ulrich? And like had I not looked through Tommy Flanagan's filmography, I would have not even put his face to the taxi driver in the game because I was like, no fucking way. That's this guy. Sure enough, he's fucking Cicero. He's the guy who like gets baited and just gets hanged right at the stake because he's associated with him.
Yeah, you think he's about to escape and it's about to ride off into the sunset and he gets fucking lynched, dude.
But yeah, that's a crazy pull. I just can't believe how many people we've tied to the game, whether it's like this movie or like The Godfather Part 2.
Oh yeah,
or just all this
attorney.
Yeah.
He's an attorney in both of those, in The Game and The Godfather. Or no, he's not an attorney. He's like a judge or something in The Godfather.
I mean, dude, we damn near know, like, we can damn near attach the whole fucking cast to this movie. Or to, like, the movies we've done on our podcast.
Yeah, Rebhorn in Carlito's Way.
Rebhorn, Penn in Carlito's Way as well.
Oh, yeah.
We're never going to do a Crash podcast. I don't think we're going to do a Crash podcast, so maybe not him.
Deborah Kara Unger.
Tommy Flanagan. Maybe we'll do a Spike Jonze movie. But yeah. That's obviously a fantastic pick. Skip Bayless Award for hottest take. I don't even know if this is a hot take. I actually don't know what the general consensus is, but I really do think this is Phoenix's best role. And unlike Russell Crowe, I have seen most of his movies. I haven't seen like I Walk the Line or The Village, but I think Her is really good. But I just think he's so fantastic in Gladiator that he just like steals the spotlight from everybody else. Joker's great too, but again, he's not as good. He's a better villain in this. He's more compelling.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know what the general consensus is, but like everything about his character, his repulsive nature, his wimpiness, but also his ambition and his cunningness, as well as some of the humor that he gets sprinkled throughout. I mean, I don't know. This is really one of my favorite like 2000s movies villains, to be honest. I mean, I'm trying to think of some other ones off the top of my head. I mean, he's no like Joker, obviously, but like he's really what makes this movie what it is and what makes the storyline so compelling.
Yeah, I think most people would probably have this in the top 5 Joaquin Phoenix performances at least. I don't know how many would have it as one. I'm not at first in Joaquin Phoenix, but like you said, I think you like his performance in Her better.
Yeah.
A lot of people point towards the Joker just because of the iconicness of the character, but this is definitely in my top 3 and in probably most people's. I think he's just perfect at playing the role he's playing. I mean, that's about it. But for my Skip Bayless Award for the hottest take, this one might get me kicked off the podcast and might get even more dislikes than the people that are hoping to find the full movie on YouTube but find our podcast instead. I'm saying that this is Ridley Scott's 5th best movie. And I'm putting Alien number 1. The rest, I don't have a solid ranking, but I'll just say I like them better than Gladiator, and I think they're better in most facets of being a movie. I'm going to put The Martian. I'm going to put the original Blade Runner. Well, a little bit underwhelming. I'll probably need to go back and watch it, but I think it's very interesting. And it's one of the more creative movies of all time. I'm also going to put American Gangster ahead of it. I know you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I liked American Gangster a lot. It's not the greatest movie of all time. I think it's a really good movie. I think Crowe and Denzel give really good performances in there. So I'm putting this at 5. And maybe I could argue Gladiators over American Gangster. I had them like super close. And then 6, I have Hannibal, which is probably
Okay.
I haven't
a drop
seen.
Off.
That's probably a super hot take, but yeah, I'll solidly put this at 4 or 5. I know that Alien, Blade Runner, and The Martian are better.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have Gladiator 3rd. I might have it 2nd. I definitely don't have it above Alien, and then it's probably a tie between like Thelma and Louise, depending on how I'm feeling. But yeah, I mean, I just haven't seen as much. You've probably seen more of his, to be honest, because I haven't seen like American Gangster or Hannibal or any of those. But I also haven't seen like Black Hawk Down or Kingdom of Heaven or some of his more acclaimed movies like
Black
that.
Rain.
Well, I don't know about that that one, but like even like Body of Lies, like I've heard that's not like a fantastic movie, but I really want to see that. That's like probably the least known Leonardo DiCaprio movie, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I need to definitely get myself more in his filmography.
That Matchstick Man. I think it's Cage and Edward Norton. It's like a heist movie or something. Oh no, that's Sam Rockwell.
Sam Rockwell. Even like Robin Hood or like Prometheus. I've heard those are like polarizing movies, but nobody thinks they're like straight awful. I mean, I just can't contest really. I mean, I don't know enough to say whether or not you're right or wrong. Arthur Kirkland Award for most unintentionally hilarious scene. For this one, I just put the opening Coliseum scene because I just think that Commodus making a mockery of all of the shit that's not supposed to happen. It was like, oh, look at this. Stick out my tongue like Stu Macher. It's just like being a little goofball. It's like the one humorous part of his character in this movie. Some could say that's inappropriate, but I actually like it quite a bit. I just think it shows his versatility while also keeping in mind that he's still an evil person. And yeah, I mean, there's one other part that I laughed at, but that's coming up in the other awards because I just thought it was so ridiculous. But yeah, that's what I would give for most unintentionally hilarious scene or part of the movie.
Yeah. It was really hard to come up with something because I don't think there's not much humor in this movie to begin with. And unintentionally hilarious
I know.
is even harder to find. There's really no one in this movie's funny. But um what I decided on for this Arthur Kirkland Award is just the person getting cut in half in the Gladiator fight. I thought
That's
that
another
was
one too, I
so
guess.
ridiculous. It was like a something out of like a slasher, like a goofy slasher movie. Like it's like a late stage Friday the 13th kill or something that you'd see in like Jason Goes to Space or whatever it is. Jason X.
Yeah, Jason X.
Yeah, they're pulling out the most ridiculous kills in that movie. So that was like something you'd see in there. And like the blood goes spraying everywhere. It's like bright red. I just thought that was funny. And
It's like
it was
Saw 3D.
yeah, some Saw 3D blood effects, but it felt kind of like out of place for the seriousness of the scene. It was like almost over the top campy, but I liked it though. It's funny.
Yeah. That's like the one part of the scene that I would say takes me out, but like the rest of it I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
The George C. Scott Award for overacting. So yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
funny.
yeah, I mean, I texted you about that too as soon as you were commenting on his performance, but supposedly Connie Nielsen was not informed that Joaquin Phoenix was gonna say it back and say it as loud as he did, so like her
Yeah,
frightened reaction is apparently genuine.
he's actually crying in real life.
Yeah. I mean, I love that scene, but yeah, that's the that's the one scene where I'm like, holy shit, Joaquin.
Yeah, that was ad-libbed, right? That wasn't in the script.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
He totally just winged it. And I actually love that it's in the movie, but
Yeah.
it's fucking crazy. Like
I mean,
there's saliva ripping out of his mouth and shit like that.
it goes on to be one of the most iconic scenes and lines from the movie, so
Yeah, I mean it's perfect. It just shows that he's like in his own delusion. Like he thinks that he's like this merciful person, but he's like this perverted, sadistic, totalitarian dictator for the people of Rome. He's just swept up in his own delusion, and that scene like perfectly illustrates his complete psychotic behavior. And yeah, this guy would have needed major amounts of therapy if he was in today's world.
yeah, I had the same exact thing. That's like the one point in the movie where they really just go for it, and Joaquin Phoenix dials it up. Like he just reaches his boiling point in that scene. I knew it was coming at some point. I knew he was gonna have an outburst, and you get it, and it's great.
That's the only scene. I mean, I guess you could argue maybe like, are you not entertained? Is like a little bit like that, but he's like, I don't know. Russell Crowe's too monotone to really overact, I feel like.
Yeah, the way he delivers it was because I had heard that line before the movie, and the way he delivered it was not how I was expecting. I thought he was gonna be like hyping up the crowd and like getting them
Yeah, putting his hands
loud
up and shit like
and like
that. Yeah.
like scream it. But yeah, the way he says it isn't how people use it or like reference it. It didn't seem it was yeah, like more monotone. So I thought it was way different, but still a great line.
Would this movie be better with Casey Affleck, Don Cheadle, Sean Penn, John C. Reilly, Christian Bale, or Bokeem Woodbine? um, so I mean, I was sort of soul searching for like other people, and honestly, I gotta give it to Don Cheadle again. I mean, like if he just was in Dijman Hansu's role.
Oh, that's disrespectful to Dijman Hansu.
No, I mean like it would have been interesting. I mean, Dijman Hansu obviously had the credit too, because he was in Spielberg's Amistad. He was one of the main guys in that, and I'm assuming that's what propelled him onto this role. But I think Don Cheadle, like he wasn't like known at this point either. Like he was in Boogie Nights, and he was in like Devil in a Blue Dress, and I guess he was in Hamburger Hill, like the 15 years before this. I don't know. Like I feel like Don Cheadle wasn't really known up until like Hotel Rwanda. And like those movies came out where he really like put the name out for himself.
Wasn't he in one of those movies called Crash? Wasn't there like three movies named
That was
Crash
after
within like
this
a
movie
10-year
though.
period?
Yeah, he was in like the 2004 like Matt Dillon Crash.
Yeah, that
But
one.
he wasn't in like the fucking or are you thinking of Traffic?
Oh, Traffic.
He's in
That's what
Traffic.
it is. Yeah.
He's in Traffic, which was also, I guess, the same year. I guess he was busy filming that movie. But
The most fraudulent Best Picture winner.
Crash,
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty controversial too. I've never seen the movie, but yeah, I've just heard every single person who's reviewed it just thinks it's like the most garbage 2.5 hours you can get yourself into. Sean Penn, I don't think could fit in this
No.
movie. I don't think Patrick Bateman could have been Russell Crowe's
That's
character.
the only thing I could think of, and I didn't even like that choice either. Bale as Maximus. I
Yeah.
think he could have given a decent performance, but Crowe's better cast for it. But that's the only thing that came to my mind. I was even running through people like Tommy Sizemore. Well, he's definitely not fitting this one. I know I picked Lawrence Fishburne on the last podcast. I don't see Lawrence Fishburne fitting in here. I'm trying to dig even deeper into like other like
Uh,
Benicio del Toro or something. Maybe could have fit in here. He might be too old. I don't know. Well, he wouldn't have been that old.
Also in Traffic though.
Yeah.
So I guess like I don't know. Could Deborah Kara Unger have been Connie Nielsen?
No.
No.
No. Connie Nielsen's very good in that role. I don't think Deborah Kara Unger has that acting range like her, or acting ability, I should say.
Yeah, I don't know.
What about like Nicole Kidman? Could she have played that role?
Actually, I could have seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she would have had the street cred too. I mean, going into that, she was obviously Eyes Wide Shut, but also like Days of Thunder, To Die For, projects like that.
Or
I
like
could have seen that.
Charlize Theron. Or was she too new
Uh,
to do that?
this is like pre-Monster, so I mean, I don't know if she could have quite pulled that off,
Yeah.
but it would have been interesting. I mean, obviously, like on a recast, she like with hindsight and everything, yes, I think so, but I don't know. Um, yeah, I guess like other 90s actors who were getting into their prime, there's no obvious choices. Yeah, like I don't think like Reese Witherspoon could have been in this or like Kate Winslet.
No.
Yeah. I should think more about this fucking award though too, because there's definitely like somebody that I'm missing. What if Arnold was the bodybuilder instead of the other guy?
No. No. That would have been
Okay.
too goofy.
All right. Moving on to our last one, the Tarantino Award for Best Line of Dialogue. Are you entertained? Are you not entertained? Is
Yeah.
this not why you are here? Um, like line of dialogue, certainly. I guess if you want to do like the monologue, I mean, I really love when he's like, "My name is Maximus Decidius Meridius" or whatever. I don't even think I said it right, but like when he like gives that whole like mini monologue to Joaquin Phoenix and basically the crowd, I
Mhm.
think that's really cool. But otherwise, I don't know. I guess I'll let you give yours first. Was that the same one, or did you have another one?
That was mine. Are you not entertained? I mean, that's the most iconic line that people reference. I also like the like strength and honor thing that they say throughout the movie. But that's not
Yeah.
really like a line. That's more of like a tagline or something they have, like their slogan.
I love before he like gets the troops to go on the fight at the beginning. That's the one part of the scene that I really like. It's where he's like, "Brothers, what we do in life echoes in eternity." He turns into like this fucking like a televangelist for his fucking soldiers and shit. It's a little corny, but I fucking like it, especially in the context of this movie. Because I guess we never even talked about like the afterlife portion of this movie. But like obviously they hinted at the very beginning. I mean, there's a scene where he literally just touches wheat flowers for like 30 seconds.
Oh yeah, the dreamscape world that he goes into.
Yeah. I think that's a little bit corny, but again, they wanted to make it not just a revenge movie. It wanted to make it like a movie about him joining his family. And so I guess like the symbolism of the door and whatnot is cool. Although I don't like how he like literally pushes the door open in real life. I thought that was fucking
Yeah.
stupid. That wraps up our Gladiator episode. As always, for more opinions and reviews, be sure to check out our Letterboxd accounts linked in the description below. Coming up next week, come excited. We're going to talk about a certain political thriller. Came out in the 90s. We're excited to talk about it.
Definitely not inspired by current events.
We'll be talking about that, of course. And yeah, as always, take care, people.